Hi neighbors, and welcome to Miracle Farm 1927 Kitchen. And today we're going to be working with apples and applesauce and showing you the easiest way to prepare it. And I will have my beautiful assistant, my daughter, helping me in a little bit. But let's get right down to it. We're cooking apples, and we're going to show you a few steps on how easy this is. And we are so glad that you joined us today. Now, this is how we make applesauce. Some of y'all asked how we do this, and applesauce is one of the easiest things you can make. All it is cooked apples, and they're mixed up. And that's all there is to it. We cooked the apples, and we added some cinnamon and just a little bit of sugar because our apples were quite tart. And they've been cooking, and got them nice and soft. And Miracle, if you would show them how to do the submergible blender there. You can use a mixer because, you know, when apples cook, they get really soft. So that would probably work just fine. But we just happen to have this submergible blender, and it really does a good job. Now all we need to do is heat up this applesauce, get it up to temperature. Oh, the other thing we did add a little bit of water because we did add a little bit of water because our apples, because they're the old-timey apples, were kind of dry. So the last ones I did, they left air bubbles in them after they had already been processed, and you're not supposed to do that. So I add a little bit of water so it packed down a little bit easier. So that's all there is to it. You cook the apples and add any spices that you want and mix them up. So these are ready to go into the jars. So we have had the jars in the oven at 200 degrees, so they're nice and hot. They have cooled off some because I don't like to handle them when they're that hot, so that sanitizes them. We've sanitized the lids. So we've got everything ready. We got our funnel. And all we have to do now is start putting the applesauce into the jars. So all we do now is we're just ladling the hot applesauce into the hot jars that just came out of the oven.
Without trying to make a mess.
And we're going to leave 1-inch head space, which means the bottom, this ring right here. She's got just a little bit more to go.
Yeah.
No, just a little bit more. There you go.
I dribbled a little bit on the back of that too.
So I'm going to wipe off the ring, the lid. So we've got our hot water in our canner. And we're going to put the hot jars and the hot applesauce in the canner. And we're going to wait till it boils. And when it starts boiling, that's when we'll start our time. And because we're not at a high altitude, our time is only 20 minutes. Now these black canners are a boiling bath canner, and because apples are a higher acid food, you can them in a boiling bath canner. You can actually boil them in, if you don't have a canner, you could use a pot, as long as you had something underneath them to keep them up off of the bottom of the pot, a little trivet or something, because that would bust the jars. So what we're going to do now is wait for this to boil. We'll put the lid on. We'll be canning other foods in the pressure canner, but this was so easy. Jellies and applesauces and high acid foods are some of the first things when you're learning how to can that you want to can, because like you saw, apples, you don't even have to put anything in them if you don't want to. I just like cinnamon. And you could just cook them up and put them in a jar and boil bath can them. And we have big people in our family, so we do quart jars, but you could easily do applesauce in pint jars, just for individuals and stuff. But we're going to wait for this to boil now. It's been 20 minutes now, and our jars are all done now. We let it cool over lunch, so even though they're still a little hot, they're ready to come out of the canner. And you might ask what you could do if you don't have a canner, or if you don't have jars. And everything I did before, remember, it's just so easy, just mashing up your apples after they cook. You can just put them in Ziploc freezer bags and stick them in your freezer and have fresh applesauce. And the way I used to do this before I had access to my own apples, and some years when the frost comes late, there's no apples. So where I get my apples is, because I can't afford to go buy fancy apples, is all the little farmers markets and all the little country stores have deer apples this time of year. And those apples aren't just for deer. They are perfectly good to eat. The only reason why they are considered deer apples is because they might be blemished, they're the wrong size, but they are ultra cheap. You can get you a great big old bag for them for about $15. And that's going to do you a lot of applesauce. So I highly recommend, if you don't have your own trees, or if you don't know anyone in your neighborhood that has trees, always keep a lookout for that, because I'm fixing to go down to the neighbors. They have got a pear tree, and my pears aren't old enough to produce any fruit. So we'll be making pear preserves with that. So there are several different ways that you can have food for your family. And I like to use a pan. And you saw me saw Miracle fill up the jars, and it was on this pan, because you're always going to dribble. And this pan just keeps everything neat. And now I've put a towel in there because they're going to be drippy. Look how beautiful. When I took the lid off just a few minutes ago, I could hear the little pops on the seals. So there you go. Nicely sealed applesauce for the winter. And the only ingredient that you have to put in it is apples. If you like nutmeg, put that in there. If you like cinnamon, like I do, put that in there. If you want a little sweeter, put a little sugar in it. But none of those things you have to put in. All you need is apples and maybe a little bit of water. See how these are just so much nicer because we did add some water to them. And the same thing if you're putting them in freezer bags. I just don't have the space in my freezer for fruit because there's just some fruit that has to go in the freezer, like my blueberries. So they take up a lot of room, and meat is the rest of the room. So that's why I can most of my stuff. And you can also dry apples too. And we'll be doing a little bit of that and show you. But thank you so much for coming along with us. Oh, I forgot. We are going to show you some before pictures and after pictures of our pantry. Was a wreck. Everything just gets thrown in there. When the jars start getting low, there's an empty space on the shelf. So, let's throw something up there. So it was just a mess. So we'll show you video of that, and I'm going to turn the camera around here in just a minute and put these jars on the shelf because there's actually room, and all the jars are nice and clean and organized now and ready to be filled up. So I am so blessed that you joined us today, and let's look at this pantry. Okay, this is our pantry, and what this used to be is it's exactly 1/4 of an old dining room. This door from my kitchen used to go into the dining room, and so we cut it in half, and now on the other side is my bedroom, and on this wall is my closet. So it's not a really big pantry. Can't hold all of my things that we can, but it's where I can get to them, and we keep the rest up in the summer kitchen. So we are in the process. You can see here we've got 3 shelves done. Took all the old food off. And what happens during the spring is a lot of outside food comes in here, and it gets stuffed on my canning shelves. And so what we're going to do is we've already gone through all the canning jars and what is old food, and we've gotten rid of that. And now we've got to organize these shelves. The floor is full because, like I said, it's a very small room. We've got our pans up on the wall. This shelf was the original shelf that came in the house, and I've got everything sitting on it that was on the shelves. And that's where I put my crock pots and regular canned goods. So these 2 boards are original boards from the house. And this is what we did to them. We went them through a planer and made them look better. But in this room, I've left some original stuff like the cabinets and the ceiling. The ceiling's never been touched, but around the inside of this door has never been finished. So I'm going to put those boards back on here as we're doing our cleaning. And this is just what it looked like originally, and I wanted to keep some of the house like that. Okay, here we go into the pantry. One of the only things I haven't got done yet is that top shelf. And that's kind of party stuff up there. And we're going to have to be getting some of that stuff out, so we're going to go through that and weed it out again. And but I've got antiques up there too. But I did get the shelves done. We've got brand new stuff we've already canned. And we got room for more stuff. So the rest of the applesauce is going to go right there. Now my husband likes things that's going to hold up. So that's why these are almost 2-inch shelves. So you could climb up these shelves and touch the ceiling, and they're not going to go anywhere. So over here's some of my teas and herbs and medicine that I kind of keep in the corner to stay out of the light. And some more herbs and medicines and snacks. And then the bottom shelf is just like crackers and chips and stuff. And then we got on the floor, we have our extra cast iron and just big bulky stuff. Here's my little rack that I carry jars back and forth to the summer kitchen in. So that's been getting used a lot here lately. An extra washboard, because everybody needs an extra washboard. And I have my big pans hanging on the wall. And I just don't have the cabinet space to put them under something, and they get used quite often. And my bigger pans are up there. And this little cabinet was in the house when we bought it, but I think it's a 1960s. You can't really see it, but this countertop is gold flaked and it's pink. And I found this little pot here that I put buns and stuff in that matches it. Oh, and something I'm so tickled with. Look at this. You know those boards that were sitting on the counter? No, they weren't sitting on the counter. They were sitting on the floor. My son put those up for me. Oh, I'm so tickled with that. And in these cabinets, these are just our regular canned foods. But the jars are so much prettier, so we put them out here. I got these on the shelf real quick, and I just wanted to show you the difference between the ones that we did today and the ones we did the other day. I didn't add water to these, and it separated while they were cooking, and it has air bubbles in it, and that's a big no-no. So we'll eat these pretty quickly, but these will just store a whole lot longer because there's no air bubbles or anything in those. And see, it just looks like a better product. But I wanted to show you that and how I got them on the shelf.